Imagine walking alone in the vast Alaskan wilderness, only to stumble upon a trapped mother wolf, her strength fading, and her pups' lives hanging by a thread. Would you risk everything to help her, knowing the dangers? Liam Hayes did just that, embarking on a journey that would redefine his understanding of courage and compassion. What happens next is a story you won't forget. The Alaskan wilderness stretched endlessly before Liam Hayes, its snow-covered landscape blending seamlessly with the pale morning sky. A seasoned prospector with a rugged demeanor and an unyielding spirit, Liam had spent the last few days traversing the icy terrain in search of precious minerals. His heavy boots crunched against the frozen ground as he trudged toward his cabin, exhausted and eager for the warmth of a fire and the solace of his modest home. The chill of the early morning air bit through his thick layers, and his breath formed frosty clouds with every exhale. Liam adjusted the strap of his gear-laden backpack, the weight pressing heavily against his shoulders. He had endured countless long days in the wilderness, but something about this trek felt heavier. Maybe it was the biting cold, or the solitude pressing against him. Just as he rounded a bend in the trail, a piercing howl tore through the stillness of the forest. Liam froze in his tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. The sound was unlike anything he had heard before, raw, anguished, and unmistakably close. Every instinct told him to turn back and continue toward the safety of his cabin, but curiosity and concern pushed him forward. He dropped his pack to the ground and moved cautiously toward the sound, his senses on high alert. The dense brush and towering evergreens obscured his view, and he stepped carefully, mindful of the crunching snow beneath his boots. As he pushed aside a branch, the sight before him made him stop dead in his tracks. There, in a small clearing surrounded by frost-draped trees, lay a massive wolf. Her thick gray fur was matted with blood, her leg caught in the cruel grip of a steel trap. She let out another heart-wrenching howl, her body trembling as she struggled weakly against the trap's grip. Liam's breath caught in his throat. The wolf was magnificent even in her battered state. Her powerful body seemed diminished, her strength sapped by pain and blood loss. For a moment Liam could only stare, torn between awe and fear. The animal's amber eyes locked onto his, filled with both defiance and desperation. He could see the life draining from her, and his heart clenched. Instinctively he took a step closer, but the wolf responded with a low, guttural growl. Her ears flattened, and the fur along her spine bristled. Liam stopped, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Easy, girl," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not here to hurt you." As he assessed the situation, Liam noticed something peculiar. The wolf's muzzle showed traces of milk. This wasn't just any wolf. She was a mother. Somewhere out there, her pups were waiting for her, likely cold, hungry, and scared. The realization struck him like a thunderclap. If he didn't act quickly, not only would this mother wolf perish, but her pups wouldn't survive either. Liam's mind raced. He knew the risks of getting too close to a wounded predator, especially one fighting for her life. But he also knew he couldn't leave her to die. He had to find a way to help her, not just for her sake, but for the lives of her unseen pups as well. "Hang on, girl," he said softly, more to himself than to the wolf. "I'll figure something out." For a moment, he hesitated, his instincts warring with his compassion. Every wilderness guidebook he had ever read, every ounce of training he had received, told him to stay away from a wild animal in distress. A mother wolf, even in this weakened state, could be deadly. One snap of her powerful jaws could leave him maimed or worse. But as he watched her lift her head weakly, letting out another soft, mournful howl, he saw not a ferocious predator but a desperate mother, clinging to the last vestiges of hope. The sound was haunting, filled with pain, longing, and a plea for help. Liam knelt, inching closer to the wolf. Her growls were low and rumbling, a warning that she was still a wild creature, despite her exhaustion. She shifted slightly, trying once more to free herself, but her movements were sluggish and clumsy. She was running out of time. "Easy, girl," Liam said softly, his voice calm and steady. "I know you don't trust me, but I'm here to help. Your babies need you, and you're their only chance." The wolf's ears twitched at his voice, but her eyes remained locked on him, unblinking and alert. Liam could see the primal fear mixed with determination in her gaze. She was cornered, helpless, but still ready to defend herself if he got too close. Backing away slightly, Liam took a moment to scan the area. If he couldn't free her safely, he wouldn't even get the chance to look for her pups. He spotted a sturdy branch lying nearby, and an idea began to form. He needed to create a barrier, something that would shield him while he worked to release her from the trap. His gaze shifted to his sleeping bag, strapped to the side of his pack. "It's not ideal, but it'll have to do," he muttered. Moving slowly, Liam retrieved the sleeping bag and the branch, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. The wolf growled faintly but didn't move, her body too drained to act on her instincts. Wrapping the sleeping bag around the branch, he created a makeshift shield, hoping it would give him enough protection to work on the trap without risking his arm. Liam approached her again, his heart pounding in his chest. The wolf's growls grew louder as he drew near, but her strength was fading fast. Her head drooped slightly, her golden eyes dulling. For a terrifying moment, Liam thought she might already be slipping away. "Stay with me," he whispered, crouching down a safe distance away. "Your pups are counting on you." Her ears flicked again, a faint sign of acknowledgement. It was enough. He reached out cautiously with his free hand, testing the release mechanism of the trap. It wouldn't budge. The jagged teeth had bent from the wolf's earlier attempts to free herself, jamming the mechanism in place. "Damn it," Liam muttered under his breath. His fingers were already starting to go numb from the cold, and every second he delayed was another second the wolf's condition worsened. Her leg was badly mangled, and infection would set in quickly if he couldn't release her soon. Liam scanned the ground around him and spotted a fist-sized rock partially buried in the snow. With careful movements, he reached for it, keeping his eyes on the wolf. Her growl deepened for a moment as he shifted, but she lacked the strength to do more than bare her teeth weakly. "It's okay," Liam whispered. "I know you're scared, but you've got pups to get back to, remember? Let's get this done." Using the rock as a makeshift hammer, he struck the release mechanism repeatedly. The dull clang of stone on metal echoed through the clearing, mingling with the soft whistle of the wind. Each strike jarred the trap slightly, loosening the bent metal bit by bit. The wolf flinched at the noise, her ears twitching, but she didn't resist. It was as though she understood on some primal level that Liam was trying to help her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the trap's jaws gave way with a sharp snap. Liam exhaled in relief as the steel teeth released their grip on the wolf's leg. Quickly, he wrapped the injured limb in a clean cloth from his pack, using it as a temporary bandage to stem the bleeding. "You're free now," Liam said softly, though he knew the wolf couldn't comprehend his words. "But we're not out of the woods yet." The wolf didn't move. Her body lay limp, her strength completely spent. For a moment, Liam feared he had been too late, that the blood loss and trauma had already taken too much of a toll. But then he saw the faint rise and fall of her chest, a fragile sign of life. Knowing she wouldn't survive on her own in this condition, Liam made a decision. He couldn't leave her here, not with her leg broken and her body so weak. She needed warmth, care, and time to heal. And her pups needed their mother if they were to have any chance of survival. Carefully, Liam pulled his sleeping bag over her entire body, wrapping her in its insulated folds. The weight of the wolf was heavier than he expected as he lifted her into his arms. Every step back to the cabin would be a challenge, but there was no alternative. He tightened his grip and began the trek through the snow. The journey was grueling. The uneven terrain and the biting wind tested Liam's endurance with every step. The wolf's limp form pressed against his chest, her fur icy to the touch. He could feel the faint thrum of her heartbeat, a fragile rhythm that spurred him onward. "Just hang on," he muttered, his breath visible in the freezing air. "We're almost there." When the cabin finally came into view, Liam felt a surge of relief. He pushed through the final stretch, his legs burning with effort. Inside, the small, rustic space offered a stark contrast to the icy wilderness. A warm haven filled with the glow of a crackling fire and the faint scent of pine. Liam laid the wolf gently on a blanket near the fireplace, her body still wrapped in the sleeping bag. He added more logs to the fire, ensuring the room would stay warm enough to help her recover. Then he set to work. From his first aid kit, Liam retrieved antiseptic, bandages, and a splint. His hands worked quickly but carefully, cleaning the wound and stitching the torn flesh as best as he could. The wolf's leg was fractured, so he used the splint to stabilize it, securing it in place with strips of cloth. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold. As he worked, the wolf stirred slightly, letting out a low, guttural sound that was more of a whimper than a growl. Liam paused, meeting her tired gaze. "You're okay," he said quietly. "I know it hurts, but you're safe now." The wolf's eyes fluttered closed again, her body sinking into the blanket. For the first time since he had found her, she seemed to relax, her breathing steady and even. Liam leaned back, his muscles aching from the effort of carrying and treating her. For now she was stable, but this was only the beginning. Her pups were still out there, somewhere in the wilderness, waiting for their mother to return. The warmth of the cabin's fire seemed to breathe life back into the injured mother wolf, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm now. Though her breathing had stabilized, her pups were still missing, and every second that passed increased the danger they faced. Liam Hayes knew he couldn't waste another moment. Pulling on his thickest coat, gloves, and boots, Liam glanced back at the mother wolf, who remained wrapped in his sleeping bag near the fireplace. Her golden eyes fluttered open for a brief moment, meeting his, before exhaustion pulled her back under. It was a look that spoke volumes, an unspoken plea to save her family. It filled Liam with a sense of purpose as he grabbed his flashlight, a hunting knife, and a sturdy bag for the journey ahead. The storm from earlier had left a light dusting of snow, making it slightly easier to spot tracks in the crisp morning light. Liam knelt just outside the cabin and examined the faint paw prints trailing back into the forest. They led in the direction he had found the mother wolf trapped, weaving through the dense pines and toward the mountain's base. If her pups were nearby, they wouldn't survive long without her warmth or milk in these frigid conditions. Liam moved swiftly but cautiously, his eyes scanning the ground for more signs. Each paw print was a marker of the mother's desperate journey before she'd been caught. He imagined her searching frantically for food or water while her pups huddled together in a den, unaware of the danger their mother was in. As Liam pushed deeper into the forest, the silence of the wilderness became almost deafening. No birds sang, and even the rustle of wind in the trees felt muted. The temperature had dropped even further, his breath forming thick clouds in the air. His fingers were already going numb despite his gloves, but he pressed on, driven by a growing sense of urgency. After hours of searching, Liam finally spotted something, a small mound of disturbed earth nestled against a rocky outcrop. Snow had partially filled the shallow depression, but tufts of fur near the entrance confirmed his suspicion. It was a den. Crouching low, he approached carefully, trying not to disturb the fragile structure. "All right, little ones," he murmured under his breath. "Let's see if you're in there." Using his flashlight, he shone a beam into the darkness of the den. At first, he saw nothing but shadows. Then, a faint whimper reached his ears, followed by the soft scuffling of tiny paws. A moment later, a tiny head poked out, one of the wolf pups, its fur matted and its eyes wide with fear. Liam's heart clenched at the sight. The pup was small, much smaller than he'd expected, and clearly weak from hunger. He held his breath as the pup hesitated, its instincts telling it to retreat into the safety of the den. But hunger and desperation won out. The little wolf stepped forward tentatively, sniffing the air. As the first pup emerged, 3 more followed, each one as frail and malnourished as the last. Their tiny bodies shivered against the cold, and their plaintive cries echoed softly in the stillness of the forest. Liam knelt down, extending his gloved hand slowly to avoid scaring them. "It's all right," he said in a soothing tone. "I'm here to help." The pups seemed to sense his intent. They sniffed his hand cautiously before moving closer. Carefully, Liam placed each one into the padded bag he had brought, their small bodies curling together for warmth. He worked quickly but gently, not wanting to leave any behind. Once he had all 4 pups secured, he double-checked the den, shining his flashlight into every corner to ensure there were no stragglers. The den was empty now, its silence a stark contrast to the soft whimpers coming from the bag. Satisfied, Liam rose to his feet and began the trek back to the cabin. The return trip was far more challenging. The added weight of the pups, though small, made the trek more exhausting, and the fading daylight cast long, eerie shadows across the snowy terrain. Liam's boots crunched through the snow with steady determination, the sound the only company he had in the otherwise silent forest. Occasionally, the pups would let out a small cry, as if calling for their mother. Liam would pause, adjusting the bag to make sure they were secure and warm. "Almost there," he would whisper. "Just hold on a little longer." As he approached the cabin, the sight of smoke curling from the chimney filled him with relief. The pups seemed to sense they were close to safety. Their cries grew softer, replaced by the gentle rustle of movement as they shifted within the bag. When Liam opened the cabin door, the warmth of the fire washed over him like a wave, melting the icy numbness in his hands and face. The mother wolf stirred as he entered, her ears perking up, and her golden eyes opening fully for the first time since he had found her. Her head lifted slightly and a faint whine escaped her throat as she caught the scent of her pups. Liam knelt by the fire and carefully opened the bag. One by one, he lifted the pups out and placed them on the blanket next to their mother. At first, the pups hesitated, as if unsure whether the injured wolf before them was truly their mother. But as she began to sniff and nuzzle them, recognition sparked, and the pups eagerly buried themselves in her fur. The mother wolf let out a soft, relieved sound that was almost like a sigh. She began to lick each pup in turn, her movements slow but filled with maternal care. The pups, now reassured, quickly latched onto her, nursing hungrily. The sight brought a lump to Liam's throat. He watched quietly, not wanting to disturb the moment. The firelight cast a warm glow over the reunited family, and for the first time in days, the mother wolf seemed to relax, her body no longer tense with pain and worry. Liam leaned back against the wall, exhaustion threatening to overtake him. But despite his weariness, a small smile played on his lips. The hardest part was over, and for now, the fragile lives he had fought to save were safe. The air inside Liam's cabin was thick with warmth, both from the crackling fire and the heartfelt reunion unfolding before him. The mother wolf, still weak but resolute, watched over her pups as they huddled close to her side. Her golden eyes, previously dulled by exhaustion and pain, now glimmered with life as she nuzzled each tiny body. It was a moment of relief, a fragile victory in the harsh wilderness. Liam Hayes sat on a nearby stool, his rugged hands resting on his knees as he observed the scene. Despite the challenges of the past 2 days, a smile crept across his face. For a man accustomed to solitude, this unexpected bond with a wolf family felt profound. Yet even in the warmth of the reunion, he knew their struggle was far from over. The mother wolf's breathing was steadier now, her body curled protectively around her pups. Every few minutes, she would lift her head to inspect them, her maternal instincts overriding her physical pain. Though her leg was still splinted and bound, she made every effort to shift her body to accommodate their needs. Liam marveled at her resilience. Despite everything she had endured, hunger, injury, and separation, her focus remained unwavering. Her strength was a silent reminder of the power of maternal love, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the pups adjusted to their new surroundings, their natural curiosity began to emerge. One particularly bold pup ventured toward Liam, its tiny paws patting softly against the wooden floor. It sniffed the air tentatively, its small body trembling with both fear and excitement. The mother wolf let out a low warning growl. Liam froze, his instincts kicking in. He understood her concern. Trust between them was still fragile. Slowly, he leaned back, lowering his posture to appear less threatening. "It's okay," Liam murmured, his voice calm and soothing. "I'm not going to hurt them." The pup paused, glancing back at its mother before taking another step forward. It reached Liam's boot and nosed at the leather, its tiny tail giving an uncertain wag. Liam extended his hand cautiously, allowing the pup to sniff him. After a few moments, it let out a small yip and scurried back to its siblings. The mother wolf's growl subsided, though her eyes remained fixed on Liam. It was clear that while she wasn't ready to fully trust him, she was beginning to accept his presence. Over the next few hours, Liam worked quietly around the cabin, keeping a respectful distance from the wolves. He prepared small portions of food, bits of leftover venison and fish, and placed them near the mother wolf. At first, she ignored the offerings, her gaze wary. But hunger eventually won out. She nudged the food with her nose, sniffing it cautiously, before taking small, deliberate bites. The pups, too young to eat solid food, stayed nestled against her side. Their soft whimpers filled the cabin as they fed, their tiny bodies pressed close for warmth. Liam felt a pang of empathy as he watched them. marveling at how fragile life could be in the unforgiving wilderness. By the next morning, the mother wolf showed subtle signs of improvement. Her movements, though still slow, were more deliberate, and her eyes held a renewed alertness. She occasionally lifted her head to scan the room, her ears twitching at every sound. Liam noticed her beginning to shift her weight slightly, testing the stability of her splinted leg. The pups were growing bolder, their playful energy returning as they tumbled over each other in the confined space. One particularly curious pup began pawing at Liam's sleeping bag, earning an amused chuckle from the man. "You're a feisty one," Liam said, gently nudging the pup back toward its siblings. As the days passed, a delicate balance developed between Liam and the wolf family. He maintained a routine of feeding and checking on them while respecting their need for space. Each day, he ventured into the forest to gather more food and firewood, ensuring the cabin remained a sanctuary from the cold. The mother wolf began to tolerate Liam's presence more openly, her growls less frequent. The pups, however, had no such reservations. They often followed him around the cabin, their playful antics bringing a sense of lightness to the otherwise tense situation. Liam couldn't help but feel a growing bond with the young wolves. Their trust in him was a stark contrast to their mother's caution, and it reminded him of the innocence and resilience of youth. One evening, as the fire crackled and the pups dozed off beside their mother, Liam sat at the edge of the room, quietly observing. The mother wolf lifted her head and locked eyes with him. For a moment, the cabin seemed to fall completely silent. There was no aggression in her gaze, only a quiet acknowledgement. Liam nodded slightly as if returning her unspoken message. It was a moment of understanding, a fragile truce born of necessity and shared survival. That night, Liam reflected on the journey so far. The odds had been stacked against this wolf family from the start, but their determination to survive had carried them through. Watching them now, huddled together in the warmth of his cabin, he felt a deep sense of purpose. The wolves had come into his life unexpectedly, and though their presence was temporary, they had left an indelible mark. For Liam, this experience wasn't just about saving the wolves. It was a reminder of the resilience of life and the unbreakable bonds of family. The family was healing, and so was he. Together they were finding strength in the harshest of circumstances, one day at a time. The days following the wolves' reunion became a delicate dance of care, patience, and observation. For Liam Hayes, what had started as a spontaneous act of compassion turned into a commitment to help this wolf family heal and regain their strength. The cabin, once a solitary sanctuary for Liam, now felt alive with the presence of the mother wolf and her 4 playful pups. The mother wolf, though still cautious, began showing subtle signs of trust. She no longer growled when Liam moved around the cabin, though her watchful eyes followed his every step. Liam took care to respect her space, avoiding any sudden movements or prolonged stares that might be interpreted as a challenge. He spoke to her in calm, low tones, narrating his actions as though she could understand his words. "Just bringing you some more water," he'd say, carefully placing the bowl near the hearth. "No need to worry." Each day, Liam noticed a small improvement in her demeanor. She no longer flinched when he came near, and her ears perked up at the sound of his voice. Her protective instincts for her pups remained strong, but she began to tolerate Liam's proximity to the little ones, who seemed utterly fearless in his presence. The wolf pups were a stark contrast to their wary mother. Unburdened by the trauma she had endured, they explored their new surroundings with boundless curiosity. They climbed over Liam's boots, chewed on the edges of his coat, and tumbled across the cabin floor in a flurry of fluffy chaos. One particularly bold pup, whom Liam nicknamed Scout, had a knack for getting into trouble. Scout often wandered off from the group, sniffing out new objects to investigate, like Liam's tools or the stack of firewood by the door. His antics made Liam chuckle, a rare sound that felt foreign even to him after so much time spent alone. "You're going to be a handful in the wild," Liam muttered one evening as Scout tugged on the hem of his pants. "But you've got spirit, I'll give you that." Every morning, Liam ventured into the forest to gather food for the wolves. Hunting wasn't new to him, but now it carried a greater sense of purpose. He set small traps for rabbits and collected fish from the nearby stream, ensuring there was enough to sustain the family while the mother wolf recovered. He prepared the food carefully, cutting it into manageable portions and tossing it toward the mother wolf from a safe distance. At first she hesitated, sniffing the offerings cautiously before eating. But as the days passed, she began to accept the food without hesitation, a clear sign that she was starting to trust Liam. The pups, still too young for solid food, fed exclusively from their mother. Liam marveled at her resilience. Despite her injury and limited mobility, she continued to nurture and protect her offspring with unwavering dedication. Liam began to notice small but significant changes in the mother wolf's behavior. She no longer stiffened when he approached the pups, and her body language was less defensive. One evening, as the pups dozed by the fire, the mother wolf shifted her gaze to Liam and let out a low, almost conversational whine. It wasn't a growl or a warning, but something softer, an acknowledgement of sorts. Liam responded in kind, mimicking her tone with a soft hum. "We're doing okay, aren't we?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The wolf tilted her head slightly, her golden eyes meeting his. It was a moment of connection, fragile yet profound. Despite their progress, life with the wolves wasn't without its challenges. The pups' energy was boundless, and they frequently knocked over items in the cabin or gnawed on anything they could reach. Liam had to rearrange his living space to keep his belongings out of their reach, turning the cabin into a makeshift den. The mother wolf's injury also required constant attention. Though her leg was healing, the splint needed adjustment to ensure proper alignment. This was the most precarious part of Liam's care routine. Every time he approached her with the intention of touching her leg, she growled, her teeth bared in a clear warning. Liam respected her boundaries, working quickly and carefully to avoid causing her additional stress. "It's for your own good," he murmured during one such attempt, sweat beading on his forehead as he tightened the splint. "You'll thank me when you're running through the forest again." By the end of the week, the mother wolf's progress was undeniable. Her coat regained its luster, her appetite improved, and she began putting more weight on her injured leg. Though still far from full recovery, she started to move more confidently, occasionally shifting positions to stretch and test her mobility. The pups, now comfortable in their temporary home, had grown noticeably stronger. They wrestled with each other in spirited play, their little growls and yips filling the cabin with life. Liam couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he watched them. "You're going to make it," he said one evening, addressing the mother wolf as she rested by the fire. "All of you." Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment Liam thought he saw gratitude in her gaze. It wasn't human emotion, not exactly, but it was something deeper, an acknowledgement of the bond they had forged in the face of adversity. As the wolves continued to heal, Liam found himself reflecting on the strange turn his life had taken. He had spent years in the wilderness, finding solace in its isolation, but now, for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of connection, not just to the wolves, but to something greater. Their resilience reminded him of the beauty and tenacity of life, even in the harshest conditions. The wolves' presence had transformed his cabin into a sanctuary, a place where survival and trust coexisted. And though he knew their time together was temporary, he resolved to do everything in his power to see them thrive. The bond between Liam and the wolves was fragile but growing stronger with each passing day, a testament to the unbreakable connection between man and nature. The days with the wolves had settled into a quiet rhythm. Liam Hayes spent his mornings gathering food and checking traps, his afternoons tending to the mother wolf's healing leg, and his evenings watching the pups tumble over one another by the fire. The once solitary cabin was now alive with energy and life. Liam found comfort in the routine and the unspoken connection that had formed between him and his unexpected guests. But one afternoon everything changed. Liam had been out gathering firewood, the sharp bite of the Alaskan winter stinging his cheeks. The snow crunched underfoot as he returned to the cabin, his arms loaded with logs. From a distance he noticed something unusual, movement near his yard. At first he thought it might be a moose or another animal passing through, but as he drew closer, the shapes became clearer. Wolves. Not just the mother wolf and her pups, but an entire pack, 6 large wolves, their dark fur stark against the snow, milling around the cabin. Liam froze. His heart raced as he counted the animals, their powerful bodies moving with a quiet, predatory grace. They had surrounded the shed where the mother wolf and her pups were housed. Some sniffed the ground, while others stood alert, their golden eyes scanning the area. The sight of the pack triggered every survival instinct Liam had. He had spent enough time in the wilderness to know how dangerous wolves could be, especially in a group. Their presence wasn't just startling, it was intimidating. He adjusted the grip on his axe, his mind racing through his options. Retreating to the forest wasn't safe, but walking into the middle of a wolf pack felt like madness. As he debated his next move, the front door of his cabin creaked open slightly. One of the pups, Scout, had pushed it ajar, his curious nose peeking out. The pup's appearance drew the attention of the pack. A low growl rippled through the group, and Liam's breath caught in his throat. Before the situation could escalate, a sharp bark cut through the air. It came from the mother wolf. She limped out of the shed, her injured leg still splinted but bearing her weight. Her presence commanded immediate attention. The pack turned toward her, their postures shifting from aggression to recognition. The mother wolf barked again, a series of sharp, deliberate sounds that seemed to communicate authority. Slowly, the tension in the pack eased. One by one, the wolves approached her, their movements cautious but reverent. They sniffed her fur and nuzzled her sides, as if verifying her identity. It became clear to Liam, this was her family. The pups, emboldened by their mother's confidence, spilled out of the cabin, yipping and wagging their tiny tails. The pack's demeanor softened further as they greeted the pups, licking their faces and nuzzling their small bodies. It was a heartwarming display of reunion, the kind of scene Liam had only ever witnessed from a distance as a wildlife observer. Now, it was unfolding right before his eyes. Liam stayed rooted to his spot, unsure of what to do. He had no intention of interfering, but he was uncomfortably aware of the wolves' proximity. As much as the pack seemed focused on the mother wolf and her pups, their sharp senses couldn't ignore his presence. One of the larger wolves turned its gaze toward him, its piercing yellow eyes narrowing. A deep growl rumbled in its throat. Liam's grip on his axe tightened. He knew better than to run. That would trigger their predatory instincts. Instead, he slowly began backing toward the cabin, his movements deliberate and calm. The growling wolf took a step forward, its muscles tense. Before anything could happen, the mother wolf let out another bark, this one louder and more commanding. The growling wolf froze, then stepped back, its posture relaxing. The mother wolf limped toward Liam, her golden eyes locking onto his. She barked again, a sound that seemed almost reassuring. She's vouching for me, Liam thought, barely daring to breathe. The mother wolf's actions seemed to calm the pack. The tension dissipated, and the wolves turned their attention back to the pups. Some lay down in the snow, their powerful bodies forming a protective circle around the younger ones. Others wandered to the edge of the clearing, keeping watch. Liam took the opportunity to retreat into the cabin. Through the window, he watched as the mother wolf settled among the pack, her head held high despite her injury. The pups climbed over her and their newfound relatives, their playful yips filling the air. It was a scene of wild beauty, a reminder of the bonds that connected these creatures. For the first time, Liam felt like an outsider in his own space, but not unwelcome. The wolves had accepted his presence, even if reluctantly, and that acceptance filled him with a sense of awe. As dusk fell, the pack showed no signs of leaving. They stayed close to the cabin, their forms blending into the shadows. Liam lit a lantern and sat by the window, watching them under the soft glow of the moon. The mother wolf's gaze occasionally drifted toward the cabin, her eyes meeting Liam's through the frosted glass. In that moment, Liam felt a profound connection, a silent understanding that transcended the barriers between man and nature. He had given this family a chance to survive, and now they had come together to reclaim their place in the wild. That night, Liam barely slept. The presence of the wolves outside filled him with equal parts wonder and unease. He knew this encounter was a rare gift, one that few people would ever experience. But he also understood the risks. These were wild animals, and their instincts could turn dangerous in an instant. The sun rose over the snow-covered landscape, casting long shadows across Liam's cabin. Inside, the atmosphere was tinged with a quiet sadness. Liam had noticed the change in the mother wolf's demeanor over the past day. Her once watchful eyes were now calm, but determined. Her pups, stronger and more playful than ever, bounded around the cabin and outside, exploring their surroundings with the curiosity only young wolves could muster. Liam knew what was coming. He had given them shelter, care, and safety, but their place was not with him. They belonged to the wild. That morning, the mother wolf barked softly, her voice carrying an almost musical quality. Her pups froze mid-play and turned to her, their ears pricking up. She repeated the bark, and one by one the pups trotted to her side. Liam watched from the window as the mother wolf stood, her weight balanced on her now-healed leg. Though she still carried a slight limp, her movements were powerful and confident, a testament to her recovery. Liam stepped outside, leaning against the doorframe. The cold air bit at his skin, but he barely noticed. He couldn't take his eyes off the family of wolves. The mother wolf glanced in his direction, her golden eyes steady. It was as if she was silently acknowledging him, a mutual understanding passing between them. The pups playfully tugged at their mother's tail, nipping and tumbling around her legs. She tolerated their antics with a patience that only a mother could muster. Liam chuckled quietly at their boundless energy, but the humor was bittersweet. He knew their time together was drawing to a close. He walked slowly toward the wolves, careful to keep his movements non-threatening. From a safe distance, he crouched and addressed the mother wolf, his voice low and even. "You've got a strong family now," he said softly. "You'll do just fine out there." The mother wolf's ears flicked at the sound of his voice. For a moment she seemed to hesitate, her gaze shifting between Liam and the forest beyond. Then she let out a low, commanding growl, a sound that immediately rallied the pups. They gathered around her, their excitement palpable. The mother wolf took a tentative step toward the forest, her body language urging her pups to follow. They hesitated, looking back at Liam as if unsure whether to stay or go. Liam gave them a reassuring nod, though his throat felt tight. "Go on," he whispered. "You belong with her." With that, the pups scampered after their mother, their tiny paws leaving delicate tracks in the snow. The mother wolf paused at the edge of the clearing, her silhouette stark against the dense trees. She turned her head one last time, her gaze locking with Liam's. Liam raised a hand in a quiet goodbye. The mother wolf let out a soft, mournful howl, a sound that seemed to carry both gratitude and farewell. Then, she disappeared into the forest, her pups trailing close behind. Liam stood in the clearing long after the wolves had vanished. The silence of the wilderness enveloped him, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. He felt an ache in his chest, a mixture of loss and fulfillment. He had saved the mother wolf and her pups, giving them a chance to thrive. And now they were gone, returning to the life they were meant to lead. That night the cabin felt emptier than it had in weeks. The absence of the pups' playful antics and the mother wolf's steady presence left a void. But as Liam sat by the fire, he found solace in knowing he had done the right thing. The wolves had returned to their rightful place, and he had played a part in their survival. The days after the wolves' departure were filled with quiet reflection for Liam. The stillness of the Alaskan wilderness seemed more profound now, as if the world itself was processing the events that had unfolded. For the first time in years, Liam felt a deep connection, not just to the land he called home, but to life itself. The encounter with the wolves had awakened something within him, something he couldn't quite put into words. Sitting by the fire one evening, Liam thought back to the moment he first saw the mother wolf, trapped and helpless. It had been a moment of pure instinct, choosing to help rather than walk away. That decision, driven by compassion, had set off a chain of events that not only saved her family, but also transformed his perspective. The memory of the pups playing in his yard brought a smile to his face. Their innocence and trust had been a reminder of life's fragility and resilience. They had depended on him, and he had risen to the challenge. Now they were thriving in the wild, free and strong. Before the wolves, Liam had been living day to day, his existence simple and solitary. But their presence had shifted something fundamental. He realized that life wasn't just about survival. It was about connection, purpose, and the impact we have on the world around us. The wilderness, which had always been a source of solace for Liam, now felt even more sacred. The bond he had formed with the wolves reminded him that even in the harshest conditions, compassion could make a difference. It wasn't just about enduring. It was about creating moments of meaning. Weeks after their departure, Liam spotted the wolves again. The mother wolf, her limp barely noticeable now, appeared at the edge of the forest with her grown pups. They stood in a line, their golden eyes observing him. Liam stepped out onto his porch, his breath caught in his chest. It was a moment of recognition, a reunion without words. The mother wolf tilted her head and let out a soft, echoing howl. The sound carried across the clearing, filling the air with a sense of peace. Liam raised a hand in farewell, knowing this would likely be the last time they met. The wolves turned and vanished into the trees, their dark shapes melting into the snowy landscape. As the days turned into months, Liam found himself reflecting on the profound lessons the wolves had taught him. 1. Strength and vulnerability. The mother wolf's desperation had driven her to trust him, a human, in her darkest hour. It reminded Liam that seeking help is not a sign of weakness, but of courage. 2. The power of compassion. Liam's decision to help the wolves went against every survival instinct and rule he had lived by. Yet it was this act of empathy that made all the difference. 3. The importance of letting go. Watching the wolves leave had been bittersweet, but it showed Liam that part of love is knowing when to release what you've nurtured back into the world. 4. Interconnectedness of life. The bond between man and animal, forged in the face of survival, reinforced Liam's belief in the profound connection between all living beings. The wolves became a story Liam shared with the few friends and visitors who ventured to his remote cabin. It wasn't a tale of heroics, but one of mutual trust and survival. He hoped it would inspire others to see the world, and the creatures within it, with greater empathy. Years later, when Liam finally left the Alaskan wilderness to return to a quieter life in town, he carried the memory of the wolves with him. Their story became a part of his own, a reminder that even in solitude, he was never truly alone. As Liam stood on his porch one last time, the cold wind brushing against his face, he thought of the mother wolf and her pups running through the snow. The wilderness, with all its beauty and brutality, had given him more than just a home. It had given him a reason to live fully. With a deep breath, Liam stepped back into his cabin, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The wolves had taught him not just how to survive, but how to truly embrace life, and for that, he would be forever grateful. This story of compassion and survival reminds us of the extraordinary connections that can form between humans and wildlife. Liam's courage and empathy not only saved a family of wolves, but also transformed his own life. If you're inspired by this incredible tale, subscribe to our channel for more stories celebrating the bond between humans and nature. Together, we can learn, grow, and protect the beauty of the wild.